Hi, I'm Farrell,
And I'm Tally.
and this is Sven Svensson, otherwise known as Feathers McGraw,
And this is Megan.
and this is going to be
Bored
Bored
of
of It.
It. Today we're going to review Scythe.
So, spoiler alert, Scythe is our favourite game of all time, so it's probably going to be a pretty biased review.
Scythe is a 1 to 5 player game. One, because there is actually a solo mode, which we have not tried yet. But you can make it into a 7-player game by adding the first expansion, which is called Invaders from Afar. But we're just going to focus on the base game today, 1 to 5 players.
Scythe is an asymmetric engine building territory control game, and don't worry if that doesn't mean a lot to you, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't mean anything to Tally either. Scythe is set in an alternate history 1920s Europe based on dieselpunk, and the main goal of the game will be to make your faction the most powerful.
You start from very humble beginnings with just a character and a couple of workers. And then by the end of the game, you should have a sprawling empire filled with buildings, mechs, and territories. And how you achieve this throughout the game, it's a very fine balance between using your turns up to move your units around the board to gain those territories, but also producing and spending resources to do things like build buildings, for example. You can also interact with these encounter tokens here and the central space, which is called the factory, which will give you some bonuses which will help you along the way in building your strong empire.
But the main thing you want to think about during your empire building will be these little missions shown at the top of the board. There's quite a variety of them, and every time you complete one, so they could be simple things such as winning in combat or completing a secret mission, you'll gain a star. And the player who gets the 6 star will be the one that ends the game and have an advantage. So it's something you're going to be thinking about the most out of everything you do. When you first get Scythe, you'll instantly notice the evocative artwork and the impressive theme. After that, you're going to see the quality of the components, such as the character and the mech that Tally is showing you now. At the start of the game, you'll randomise the faction mats shown here and give one to each player. This will tell the player who they're going to be for this game. Each faction has their own distinct mech abilities and also one special power, and this power will break one of the base rules of the game. You'll also randomise the player mats shown here and give one to each player. These randomise the order of actions you can do on your turn, meaning that when you combine these with the faction mats, each game is going to lead to new situations to assess and think about, meaning that even when you're familiar with the factions, you can never get complacent. Your turn will consist of taking your player token, putting it on a section of your player mat, and then trying to do both a top and a bottom row action. This is just a clip to show how the kind of normal turns will look and gameplay will look. So you start by putting your player token on a section of your player mat. And in this case, we picked move, and we can move 2 people, 1 space. So this is a character, which is used for encountering tokens in combat. And I'm going to move a worker, which is used for producing resources and carrying resources. Now, can't do a bottom row action because we don't have any resources to spend at the moment. So in the normal game, another player would take their turn now, but I'm just going to keep going to show you how it goes. So now we want some resources, so we're going to produce, and workers produce 1 resource of the tile they're on per worker. So in this case, we'll get 1 metal, and we'll also get 1 worker. And then we still don't have any resources. So in this case, we're going to move again, So the character is going to move here, and now he interacts with his encounter token. And we're also going to move this worker here. So that encounter token gives us an encounter card. And in this instance, we're going to hire the inventor and pay 3 to build 1 structure. So we pay the $3. And then we get to take one of these off our maps. So we're going to build the mine, which lets us get out of our starting area, which this river is currently blocking us from moving. But then on a 4th turn, we're going to actually link the top and the bottom action. So we're going to produce again. So in this case, we now have 2 workers here. So we produce 2 metal. But then we're instantly going to do the bottom row action and spend 3 of these metals to deploy, which also gives us 2 coins. And we're going to pick this mech, which lets us move an extra space. And this is kind of just how the game goes. You get resources, you try and empty out your board to get the stars at the top of the track, and then hopefully you win. One of my favorite parts of the game are these encounter cards. They're all individually illustrated, which is just amazing. And they also inject some humor into the game with their colorful descriptions that the game designers have you read aloud to everyone else at the table. Other actions include increasing your popularity to help with your endgame scoring, increasing your power to use in combat, gaining combat cards also for use in combat, or gaining money, which is both used to pay for actions and as your endgame scoring.
So despite the aesthetic of Scythe, it's not actually a war game. Combat does happen, but it's actually not as often as you might think, and sometimes it can happen not at all actually. Kind of depends how many players you have and how much competition there is for territories usually. But the mechanism for combat is pretty simple. A player will move one of their units onto a territory already occupied by another player, and then combat ensues. And then each player will have a combat wheel, which has a numerical value, and you have to gamble an amount of power from your power track that you want to put into the combat. And you can also supplement this with a combat card, which has a value between 2 and 5. Put those together to create a total, and each player reveals their totals on their combat wheels and combat cards simultaneously, and the highest value wins the combat. And then each player has to lose that amount of power that they gambled. So the game ends when a player places their 6th and final star on the triumph track. But what we love about this game is that the player that does that isn't necessarily the player that wins the overall game, because you win by counting up the total amount of coins that you have. And you collect coins throughout the game, so you have coins in your hand, so we count those up. And then you get coins from the amount of stars that you have on the triumph track. You get coins from the amount of territories that you have, and also any leftover resources that you didn't get to spend in the game. And then this is then multiplied by your score on the popularity track. So the popularity is quite important. And there's also a small buildings bonus. So depending on where you've built any buildings, you can also gain some small bonuses here and collect a couple of coins from building in certain areas.
So probably our favourite thing gameplay-wise is how quickly the turns take. There's very little downtime, and you're always left feeling engaged and involved. And it's a really nice concept, the way the game works, and snap, snap, snap with the turns, as opposed to some of the more classic, heavier board games that take 5-10 minutes a turn if you have a lot going on. And although this looks like there's a lot going on, it's actually just quick and easy. So we're just going to do a few quick fire review comments. The storage for the game is pretty good. It comes with about 1 million baggies, and everything goes back in the box really easily.
Comes with a very clear and colourful rulebook.
The theme and the artwork all kind of serve the gameplay, so everything's related and vice versa, which is pretty cool.
The setup, particularly for new players, is super easy. Everything on the player mat has a depiction or a divot detailing where your pieces need to be placed.
It's also true for the game board because there's illustrations where all of the cards go, and even the objective tiles and encounter tokens.
The game is asymmetrical, so every faction ability is different, which means that the multiplayer value is super high, and every game can be different.
And one of the best things I find is how you never know who's going to win till the end game counting up. And this kind of means that everyone's feeling involved and no one feels left behind the entire game, and you can also get a lot of surprise victories.
I think the main takeaway from this review that we want to put out there for anyone thinking about getting Scythe is that even though it kind of looks a bit complex and intimidating, the mechanisms of the game are actually super simple. It's really all about maximising your turn with your top and bottom row actions to maximise your output on your turn.
I think my argument would be it can't be that complex a game if your turn can be over in only 10 seconds.
Yeah, and the main strategy really comes from the randomisation of your faction and player mat, which will make every game different.
As this is a family channel, we have to ask the dogs what they think. Do they like Scythe? Well, as you can see from these photos, they don't. They hate it because of how much we love to play it instead of playing with them. So now, unfortunately, onto the negatives. Tally, will you tell them the negatives?
None. There are literally none.
Well, there you have it.
Although I do hate playing the Nordics faction.
Yeah, but that's more of a personal preference and a criticism of the game.
They're still trash. We love this game, which maybe will surprise you given how negative we were about it the whole way through this review. You've got to get this game, and it's an amazing gateway game into more complex strategy games. If you've only ever played games like Risk or Monopoly, this is such a good introduction into more sophisticated games.
Yeah, when I got this, I'd been kind of slowly upping my collection. I had a good mix of like casual and even some heavier games than this. But when I got Scythe and we played it for the first time, it just felt like the game I'd been looking for. I just had a real sense of contentment because I was just like, this is all I want to play now. This has everything. There's nothing not to like about it. So basically, just get it. Get it. There's no reason not to. Just get it.
Thanks for watching our first video. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please be sure to hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. And we really hope we've convinced you to buy Scythe.
Also hit subscribe because we're going to be making a few more videos. Wingspan's coming next.
And if you'd like to see us review the expansion packs for Scythe, please let us know in the comments.
And also any other games that you would want reviewed, we're happy to try and do it.
We've got plenty.
Alright, cheers.
Cheers.